Don't come looking for this place. If you find a road that isn't on a map, if you see a turnoff that feels like it's calling to you, you turn around. You drive until the gas tank is dry, and then you run. The silence here is a lie. The stillness is a cage. They say these places are empty for a reason. They're wrong. It's not that everyone left. It's that they were never allowed to. My name's Leo. Or it was. I'm not so sure who I am anymore. I'm a ghost, I think. A ghost leaving another ghost story. I explore abandoned places. It's what I do. Or, again, what I did. I have a channel online. You've probably never seen it. Small fry. Just another guy with a GoPro and a fondness for tetanus shots, walking through the skeletal remains of forgotten dreams. Factories where the machinery looks like sleeping iron dinosaurs. Schools with childish drawings still taped to the walls, faded to pastels by decades of sunlight. Hospitals where you can almost hear the phantom beeps of dead machines. I always had rules. Never go alone. Always have a hard out time. Always tell someone my exact location. I broke all three for Blackwood Creek. It started, as these things often do, with a map. An old, brittle survey map from the 1930s I bought in a dusty antique shop in rural Pennsylvania. I was looking for old logging camps, maybe a disused rail spur, but tucked away in the corner, nestled deep in a sprawling state forest, was a town I'd never heard of. Blackwood Creek. A perfect little grid of streets, a symbol for a church, a school, even a post office. I cross-referenced it with modern maps, Google Maps, USGS surveys. Nothing. It was like it had been surgically removed from the landscape. The forest healed over the scar. The obsession took root then. A town that existed and then simply didn't. It wasn't a ghost town in the classic sense, one that withered and died when the gold ran out. It was a phantom limb on the map of the state. The drive out took me deep into the wilderness, far past where the asphalt gave way to gravel, and the gravel to a barely there dirt track overgrown with weeds. My truck groaned in protest, branches like bony fingers scraping along the paint. Twice I almost turned back. A primal part of my brain, the part that our ancestors listened to when they heard a twig snap in the dark, was screaming at me. But the pull of the mystery was stronger. The thought of being the first person to document this place, to give it back its voice, was a siren's call. The track ended abruptly at a rusted chain-link fence, half swallowed by ivy. The gate was chained, a thick, corroded padlock holding it fast. But the fence itself was collapsing further down. It was an invitation. I shouldered my pack, checked my GoPro, and stepped through the breach. The air changed instantly. It grew heavy, still. The constant hum of the forest, the insects, the birds, the wind in the leaves, it all just stopped. The silence was absolute. It wasn't peaceful. It was pressurized, like the moment before a lightning strike. I walked down what must have been the main street. The sense of preservation was uncanny. Houses stood in neat rows, their gardens choked with weeds, but the structures themselves defying the decades of neglect. A tricycle lay on its side on a sidewalk, its red paint still shockingly vibrant. Further down, a general store, its large windows miraculously unbroken, just coated in a thick film of grime. Through the dirt, I could see shelves still lined with cans and boxes. It felt wrong. Abandoned places decay. They crumble.
They are reclaimed. Blackwood Creek felt less reclaimed and more paused, like someone had hit the stop button on a VCR in 1938 and the tape had been held in that exact position ever since. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs, a mixture of exhilaration and a deep, gut-wrenching dread. This was the jackpot, the find of a lifetime. I switched on my main camera, my voice a dry rasp as I began my narration. Leo here, and you are not going to believe this. I'm in a place that shouldn't exist, a town called Blackwood Creek. I spent the first few hours just walking the perimeter, a slow, deliberate circuit. The entire town was maybe a square mile, surrounded on all sides by the unnaturally silent woods. There was one way in and one way out, the track I had followed. Everything was here. A small, white-steepled church, a brick schoolhouse with a rusted swing set in the yard, the chains groaning softly in a non-existent breeze. A town hall, squat and official, made of dark stone. And looming over it all, at the far end of the main street, was the reason for the town's existence. The headframe of a mine, a skeletal watchtower of steel and wood, stark against the gray sky. My plan was to do a general sweep and then pick a building to investigate thoroughly. The town hall seemed the logical choice. Records, documents, answers. The heavy oak doors were unlocked. They swung open with a low groan that sounded like a complaint, releasing a puff of stale, musty air. Inside, it was like stepping into a photograph. A thick layer of dust covered everything, a gray snow that deadened all sound. Sunlight struggled through the tall, grimy windows, illuminating dancing dust motes in thick, cinematic shafts. There was a main hall with wooden benches and a reception desk. Behind the desk, a hallway led to a series of offices: mayor, clerk, foreman. The foreman's office. That was it. That was the heart of this place. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open. It was a simple utilitarian room, a large wooden desk, a filing cabinet, a wall-mounted map of the mine's tunnels that looked like an ant farm for giants. But what drew my eye was on the desk. A thick leather-bound ledger, lying open. I ran a gloved finger over the cover. Blackwood Mining Company, Foreman's Log, Arthur Vance. I sat down in the creaking chair, the sound deafening in the silence, and began to read.
The first entries were mundane: tonnage reports, equipment maintenance, payroll notes. Vance had a neat, precise handwriting. He wrote about the miners, their families, the small triumphs and tragedies of a small, isolated community. He wrote about his daughter, Sarah, and her upcoming 7th birthday. He wrote about the hope that the new, deeper vein, Vein 4, would bring. It was the human touch I always looked for, the ghosts of everyday life. But then, about a month into the log, the tone began to shift. October 12th, 1937. Broke into a new cavern in Vein 4 today. The geology is odd, not like the usual coal and slate. It's a crystalline rock, black as pitch, that seems to drink the light from our lamps. It has strange acoustic properties. A dropped pickaxe doesn't just clatter, the sound seems to get caught in the rock, echoing back a half-second later, but purer, cleaner. The men are calling it echo stone. It's a curiosity. October 19th, 1937. The echo stone is more than a curiosity. It runs in a massive seam. We've been blasting around it, but the men are spooked. They say they hear things, whispers following the echoes of the machinery, like a voice hidden in the reverb. I went down myself, stood in the cavern. It's quiet, but it's a loud quiet. You feel it in your teeth. I heard it too, faint, like a radio tuned between stations, probably just the wind in the shafts. I looked up from the ledger, my own ears straining against the oppressive silence of the office. Was that a hum? I shook my head, my mind playing tricks on me. It was an old building,
Old buildings make noise. I forced myself to focus back on the page. November 2nd, 1937. Morale is low. McGregor quit today, walked off the job, said he'd rather starve. He claimed the Whispers were using his name, said the stone knew his wife's name. He looked half mad. I'm worried. The output is down. Corporate will have my hide if we can't make this vein profitable. November 15th, 1937. It's not just whispers anymore. I was down in Vein 4 inspecting a support beam when I heard my daughter, Sarah, laugh. Clear as day. Just a single, happy little giggle. I spun around, my heart leaping into my throat. The cavern was empty. Just me and the black stone. When I got home, my wife told me Sarah had been at school all day. The laugh I heard, it wasn't an echo of something happening in the moment. It was an echo of a memory. I felt a cold dread wash over me. I stood up and walked to the window, peering out at the silent tone. The swing set in the schoolyard was moving again, a slow, rhythmic back and forth, but there was no wind. Not a single leaf on the trees was stirring. My breath hitched. This wasn't my imagination.
I returned to the desk, my hands shaking slightly as I turned the page. Vance's neat script was becoming messier, the words more cramped. November 28th, 1937. The stone doesn't just echo memory, it creates. It finds a fear, a regret, and it gives it a voice. Last night, I heard my brother again. He died in the Great War. I heard him calling my name, just like he did when the shell hit our trench. It was so real, I vomited in the tunnel. The men are talking now, not just about whispers, but about visions. O'Malley saw his father, who's been dead for 10 years, standing at the end of a tunnel, beckoning to him. He refuses to go back down. December 5th, 1937. We can't stop. The company wants the ore. They don't care about ghosts. They've sent a man from head office to observe. He thinks we're all drunks or liars. I took him to Vein 4. He stood there, smug, arms crossed. Then his face went pale. He asked me, "Who is that woman? Why is she crying?" There was no one there. He left on the evening train and never came back. We are on our own. December 12th, 1937. It's getting worse. The effect isn't staying in the mine. People are hearing things in their homes, seeing things. The rock dust gets on our clothes, our boots, in our lungs. We're bringing it into the town. It's infecting Blackwood Creek. Little Sarah told me she had a new friend, a shadow boy, who lives in her closet and tells her secrets. When I asked what he tells her, she said, "He tells me what you're afraid of, Daddy." I slammed the book shut. My heart was hammering. The shadow boy. I glanced into the dark corners of the foreman's office, suddenly terrified of what I might see. The silence in the room wasn't empty anymore. It was full. It was watching me. I had to get out. This was too much. This wasn't just a ghost town. It was a tomb. I grabbed my pack, my hands fumbling with the straps. I stood up, ready to bolt, to run back to my truck and never look back. But as I turned, my eyes fell on the mine map on the wall. Vein 4 was clearly marked, a dark, jagged scar deep in the earth. And next to it, Vance had scrawled a note in a frantic, almost illegible hand. It's a parasite. It feeds on memory, on emotion, on life. It showed us what we feared most until we became our fears. It doesn't kill you. It empties you, replaces you with an echo. An echo. The word hung in the air. That's what this town was, an echo, a perfectly preserved moment of horror. My fear was a living thing, a cold knot in my stomach. But another feeling was warring with it, a terrible, consuming curiosity. I was a storyteller, and this was the greatest, most terrible story ever told. To leave now would be to leave it unfinished. I had to see. I had to know. I had to go to the source.
I had to go to the mine. Making that decision was like stepping off a cliff. There was no going back. I left the town hall, the heavy doors closing behind me, with a sound like a final breath. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and blood red. The shadows grew long, stretching like grasping fingers across the main street. The walk to the mine head was the longest of my life. Every dark window of every silent house felt like an eye watching me pass. The swing set was still now. The silence had returned, but it was different. It felt expectant.
The head frame was a monster of rusted metal. The entrance to the mine was a gaping black mouth at its base, covered by a heavy iron grate. A sign, faded but still readable, was bolted to it. Blackwood Mining Co., no trespassing. The padlock on the grate was massive, but like everything else in this town, it was frozen in time. It wasn't rusted shut. With a surge of adrenaline-fueled strength, I wrenched it open. It fell to the ground with a clang that was immediately swallowed by the darkness. I slid the heavy grate aside. A wave of cold, damp air, thick with the smell of wet rock, and something else, something metallic and ozone-like, washed over me. I switched on my headlamp. The beam cut a sharp white cone into the oppressive darkness, but it felt weak, insignificant. I took a breath and stepped inside. The main shaft descended at a shallow angle, wide enough for 2 ore carts to pass. The tracks were still in place, disappearing into the gloom. The air was thick and hard to breathe, and the sound, my God, the sound, or the lack of it. My footsteps, which should have crunched on the gravelly floor, were muffled, stolen the instant they were made. My own breathing sounded distant. I followed the tracks deeper, my headlamp beam bouncing off damp rock walls. Side tunnels branched off, dark and forbidding, but I stayed on the main path, looking for a sign, a marker for Vein 4. Then I heard it. The first echo. It was the sound of a pickaxe striking rock, a single sharp chink. It came from somewhere ahead of me, deep in the darkness. But a half-second later it came again, from the walls around me. Not a rebound, but a perfect replicated sound. Chink. I froze, my blood turning to ice. I was not alone. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding thin and pathetic. It died instantly, absorbed by the stone. There was no reply. Only the silence, which now felt heavier than ever. I kept moving, slower now, every sense on high alert. I passed an old ore cart, its wheels fused to the tracks with rust. Inside there was a scattering of that strange black rock Vance had described. I reached out and touched a piece. It was cold, unnaturally so, and felt dense, heavy. It seemed to absorb the light from my lamp, leaving a small void of pure blackness. As my fingers touched it, a whisper slithered through my mind. Not a sound, but a thought that wasn't mine. So afraid. I snatched my hand back as if I'd been burned. I stumbled backwards, my heart hammering. The thought had been in my own mental voice, but the sentiment, the cold observational tone, was alien. I was losing it. I had to be. This was what happened to Vance, to the miners. The isolation, the darkness, the power of suggestion from the foreman's log. Then I saw the marker. A wooden sign, nailed to a support beam, half rotted, but the number was still clear. 4. This was it. The entrance to Vein 4 was a narrow, low tunnel, a black maw that seemed to exhale cold. I hesitated for a long time. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, but Vance's last words from the log echoed in my head. "It empties you.
replaces you with an echo. What happened here? What did that mean? I had to see the end of the story. I ducked into the tunnel. The oppressive silence intensified. The air grew colder. The beam from my headlamp seemed to bend, to warp around the corners. And then the cavern opened up before me. It was beautiful and terrifying. A vast natural cave, its walls and ceiling entirely lined with the echo stone. It didn't glitter or shine like crystal. It was a matte, velvety black that swallowed the light. My powerful headlamp beam, which could cut through 100 yards of darkness outside, barely reached the far wall. The light just stopped, consumed by the stone.
And the voices started. Not just whispers now, full sentences, fragments of conversation, overlapping, echoing, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. Did you check the pressure gauges? Mary, I swear, I'll be home for supper. He's got the fever bad, doctor. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you. They were memories. The last memories of the miners, of the townspeople, absorbed and endlessly replayed by the stone. The final psychic energies of Blackwood Creek trapped in a geological prison. I staggered into the center of the cavern, turning in a slow circle, overwhelmed. It was a symphony of ghosts. I could feel their emotions washing over me. Hope, fear, love, anger. It was too much. I covered my ears, but it did no good. The voices weren't just in the air. They were in my head. Then one voice cut through the others. A little girl's voice. "Are you afraid, mister?" I spun around. Standing near the far wall, almost lost in the light-eating darkness, was the silhouette of a small child. I couldn't make out any features. It was just a void in the shape of a girl. "Sarah?" I whispered, the name tasting like ash in my mouth. The silhouette giggled. It was the same laugh Vance had described in his log. A perfect, clear, happy sound that was the most terrifying thing I had ever heard. "Daddy was afraid, mister. He was afraid of losing me, so the stone showed him." The cavern shimmered. The cacophony of voices faded, replaced by one scene playing out on the black canvas of the walls. I saw Foreman Vance, his face twisted in anguish. He was running through the tunnels, calling for Sarah. I saw him burst into this very cavern, and I saw what he saw. His daughter, Sarah, standing just as the silhouette was now. But then she flickered, her form changing. She grew gaunt, pale, her eyes sinking into her skull. She coughed, a terrible, wet sound. Diphtheria, tuberculosis, every parent's nightmare from that era. The stone had found his deepest fear, his daughter suffering, and made it real for him. "It showed them all," the echo of Sarah whispered, her voice filled with a chilling, ancient knowledge. "Mr. O'Malley saw his dead father, who told him he was a disappointment. Mr. McGregor heard his wife whispering that she never loved him. It finds the crack in your heart, mister, and it fills it with silence." The vision of Vance faded. I was alone again with the child-shaped void. "What did it do to them?" I asked, my voice trembling. "It emptied them," she replied simply. "They gave all their memories, all their fear and love and pain to the stone, until there was nothing left inside, just a quiet, empty house. Then they just stopped, one by one, some in their homes, some in the street, some down here. They just stopped, and the town got very, very quiet." The truth hit me with the force of a physical blow. They weren't killed.
There was no monster, no massacre. The entity, this echo stone, was a psychic vampire. It had fed on the entire town, consuming their spirits, their very consciousness, until they were just hollow shells. It had replaced them with these echoes. The perfectly preserved town was a monument to their stolen lives. "And now," the echo of Sarah said, her voice seeming to come from right behind me, "what are you afraid of, mister?" My own fears, my own secret anxieties rose up in my mind, unbidden. The fear of dying alone, the fear of meaninglessness, of my life being just a series of forgotten videos on a dead channel, the deep, dark memory of my own father wasting away in a hospital bed, not recognizing me.
The stone flickered. The air grew thick. I saw my father, not as he was at the end, but healthy, strong, as I remembered him from my childhood. He was standing where the silhouette had been. He looked at me, and his face filled with a terrible, profound disappointment. "You're still just playing in the dark, son?" he said, his voice, my own memory, turned into a weapon. "Chasing ghosts instead of living a life? What a waste." The words were a physical pain. Tears streamed down my face. This was it. This was how it worked. It would show me this over and over. It would take this memory, this fear, and use it to hollow me out, to drain me until I was just another silent statue in this cursed town. But as the phantom of my father spoke, another part of me, the part that had survived decades of exploring dangerous places, fought back. It was a cold, pragmatic anger. This thing was using my own heart against me. I would not let it. "You're not him," I snarled, my voice raw. "You're just a recording." My father's image wavered. The Sarah Echo's giggle sounded again, but this time it seemed strained. "The recordings are real to you," it whispered in my head. I had to get out. I turned and ran, blindly, away from the vision, away from the voice. I scrambled out of the cavern, back into the narrow tunnel. The voices of the miners swirled around me, grabbing, pulling. I felt phantom hands on my shoulders. I fell, my knee cracking against the hard rock. My headlamp flew off, skittering into a puddle, and hissed out, plunging me into absolute, total darkness. Panic, pure and primal, seized me. I was blind, miles under the earth in a place that ate souls. I was going to die here. I was going to become another echo. I crawled, my hands scraping on the rock, feeling for the rail of the ore track. The whispers were all around me, using my name now. "Leo, Leo, it's no use. Stay with us. Be quiet with us." My hand found the cold, rusted metal of the track. I had a direction. I got to my feet and stumbled forward, one hand on the tunnel wall, the other held out in front of me, running through the suffocating blackness. I ran past the side tunnels, past the abandoned cart. I could feel the main shaft getting closer, the air changing slightly. Then I burst out of the mine entrance into the twilight. I fell to my knees on the damp ground, gasping the clean, cold air, my lungs burning. I had made it. I was out. I didn't stop. I scrambled to my feet and ran through the main street of Blackwood Creek. I didn't look at the houses. I didn't look at the swing set. I just ran. I ran until I crashed through the collapsing fence and back to the dirt track. I didn't stop until I reached my truck, fumbling for the keys, my hands shaking so badly it took me 3 tries to get the door open. I threw myself inside, locked the doors, and cranked the engine. The headlights cut through the encroaching night, illuminating the silent, waiting trees. I slammed the truck into reverse and tore out of there, never looking back. I drove all night, fueled by terror and coffee, until the sun came up and I was hundreds of miles away. I've been in this sterile motel room for 3 days now. I haven't slept. Every time I close my eyes, I see the light-eating stone. I hear the echoes. I told myself I was safe. I told myself I had escaped. But the reason these places are empty isn't because of what stays there. It's because of what you take with you. Last night, I was typing up my notes, trying to make sense of it all, trying to write this warning,
and I noticed something on the desk beside my laptop. A small, black rock. I must have picked it up subconsciously. A souvenir. It was sitting on my notepad. It was matte black. It seemed to be drinking the light from the motel lamp. As I stared at it, I heard a sound, a faint, tinny echo. Click, click, click. It was the sound of my own keyboard, repeated a half-second later, coming from the rock. Then I heard another echo, not a sound in the air, a thought in my own mind, but it wasn't mine. It was a cold, quiet observation. So afraid. I didn't escape Blackwood Creek. I just brought a piece of it home. The foreman was wrong. It's not a parasite that stays in one place. It's a seed, and I carried it out into the world. This motel room is starting to feel very quiet. The traffic sounds from the highway outside seem distant, muffled. My memories, my own memories feel thin, faded like an old photograph. I look in the mirror, and the face I see feels less and less like my own. I'm being emptied. I'm being replaced. And by listening to this, by hearing the story, by knowing about the stone, a seed has been planted in you too. Listen. Can you hear it? The silence is coming for you now. The story is told. The seed is sown. The quiet spreads. We thank you for listening.